Well, I don't read the Bible or I can't get into it. So let me tell you a story about David. David was married to Bathsheba. Bathsheba used to be with her husband Uriah, who was a servant of David. David sent Uriah out, had him killed in battle. David then married Bathsheba. David got Bathsheba pregnant. The child that she was pregnant with grew sick. If you didn't know, David was the man after God's own heart. Although he was a man after God's own heart, David still had some issues. David still did things that weren't necessarily pleasing to the Lord. David fasted. David was mourning. David was grieving. He was praying and begging and begging and begging God to not let this child die, for God to intercede, for God to intervene, for God to come through, for his child to live, for his child to get better. God didn't come through because of some of the things that David had done. Although God forgives all sins, but that doesn't mean there won't be consequences to what you've done. God did not save this child. This child actually died. This baby actually died. Instead of David getting in his feelings towards God, instead of David saying, I'm not serving God anymore, I'm angry with God, he stayed in a posture of, when he got the news that this child died, like he stopped mourning, he stopped grieving. He got up, cleansed, washed himself, put on lotions, and like went on about his day. We'll make it sound better. What do you do when God says no? I know I went through a season, y'all, that lasted 2.5 of those 4 years. That whole season was like a no season for me. God just said no on everything. Like, well, I've been praying for this and I'm believing for God for this and I'm standing for this. But, what do you do when God says no? Sometimes his answer is no. Sometimes it's no for this season. And sometimes it's no forever. Now that I've crossed over into my promised land, a lot of the things that God took away from me that I thought was no forever, he's now presenting them back. He's now giving them back. During that time of him telling me no, it strengthened me. It grew me up. It tested me. It tested my faith. It tested my loyalty. It tested my heart posture. Like God is checking to see, are you going to keep me in your feelings when I don't answer when you think you're ready for me to answer? Or if I don't show up the way you expect it? Or if I don't come through when you expect it? If I don't bring that man home, are you still going to serve me? Or if I don't bring that woman home, are you still going to serve me? If I don't restore that marriage, are you still going to be faithful to me? Like, let's really take a step back and reflect and ask ourselves, if God took this away, if God said no, or if God doesn't restore what I believe he's going to restore, or doesn't fix what I believe he's going to fix, you got to get to the point where you know God can, but you don't know if he will. How does that affect you? Did you cringe just now? Are you ready to scroll past this because it's stepping on your toes? The things that I thought that God had stripped away and just wasn't giving back, I was content with that because I realized everything that I was seeking and everything that I was trying and everything that I was desiring, everything that I needed was in the Lord. And someone who's used to making 5 figures in a week and 5 figures in a few hours, that was hard for me. Like, Lord, I don't care if you take that away. I don't care if you do this. I don't care if you do that. Like, I care that I'm in your presence. I care that I'm in your will. I care that I have you. Lord, don't take your spirit away. That's what I had to learn how to do. At the end of the day, if God says no, he's still good. If God doesn't fix it, he's still good. If God doesn't restore it, he's still good. If God says something and still didn't do it when you thought he was going to do it, the way you thought he was going to do it, who you thought he was going to do it with, at the end of the day, God is still good. I want you guys to know what's not sexy, what's not popular, what's not trending, what's not going to get a lot of likes, what's not going to get a lot of reshares, what's not going to get a lot of follows, but it's still truth. It's still God. You know, we desire these things and believe God for these things, but then when you go in that season that you've never heard of, nobody's ever talked about, all of this is new to you. You think you're the only one going through it. Some of the things that you're going to be up against is not necessarily the enemy. God is behind it. We start to feel like, well, maybe this wasn't God. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. I should just go back to my sinful ways and my worldly ways because it was better off before I told God yes. Oh, that was a time I fought with that. It was like, God, before I told you yes, life was good. Life was great. At least I thought it was. I've learned that anytime I misdiagnosed a season or misunderstood a season or misinterpreted what God said or what I thought he said or what I thought he meant. Thank you, Holy Spirit. I know I heard him right, but maybe I didn't discern him right. Maybe I didn't stay at his feet long enough for him to keep finished speaking. We got up with the instructions he gave us, and then we don't see the outcome or manifestation of what he promised us. Then we come back to God like, you told me to do this. You told me to do this. This doesn't look like this. This man ain't acting right. This woman ain't acting right. This wife that you gave me, she ate the apple. Regardless of where you are in your walk with God, there's always something to learn. There's always something new to know. You won't always get it right. You won't pass every test. Sometimes it's more of he needed you to get the experience. Because I want you to understand the experience that you have now gives you language. Now that you have language, you have revelation. Now that you have revelation, you have a testimony. Now that you have a testimony, there's hope for somebody behind you. There's hope for somebody coming after you. You know what it was like when God told you no. You know what it was like when you prayed to God and fasted to God to believe for that baby to live and God said no. You know what it was like to reap the consequences of your actions. You know what it was like for God to be silent. You knew what all of that was like, but God was still good in spite of your feelings being hurt. That right there is a part of your purpose. So many people, what have I been called to do? What have I been assigned to do? One of the first things I want to ask, where have you been attacked? Because wherever you've been attacked, and I mean, we get hit always, but wherever your biggest attack was, your biggest breakdown was, your biggest crushing, whatever threw you at the Lord's feet, 9 times out of 10, even when I do these calls, like my coaching calls, these one-on-one calls, a lot of times I can tell your purpose is attached to that. Sometimes you will be in a season of the Lord telling you no. That season felt like God was just throwing me monkey wrenches every which way I turned. Nope, you can't do this. Nope, you can't go there. Nope, I'm not making you feel better in this situation. Nope, I'm not coming through on this. It's easy to say, I trust the Lord and I lay at his feet and I'm going to do this and I will always serve the Lord, Peter. Lord, I will never deny you. Sometimes God is not speaking because we're not being honest with him. Sometimes God is not revealing because we're not being true with him. We're coming to him in prayer and in a posture with a mask on. God knows in your heart you're really bitter about the situation. You got to show all of that to God. He already knows it. So why come to him like y'all best friends? But you mad at your best friend, but you won't tell him. You're upset with your best friend, but you won't tell him. You feeling some type of way about your best friend, but you won't tell him. Do you feel that conviction? Is your heart getting hot? Do you feel like heat on the inside? That's the Holy Spirit right now. But guess what? Even feeling that too is okay. It's not okay to stay there. But nevertheless, nonetheless, I still serve you. I still trust you. It was a lot of times I had to talk with God, several talks with God. God, I don't like this, but I ain't going nowhere. God, I'm feeling some type of way, but I ain't going nowhere. God, now that one right there, that one made me mad, but I ain't going nowhere. Everything that I needed, I could get from him. Everything that God can do. But there are many things that God chooses not to do. God came and blessed David tremendously after that. But that baby that he had with Bathsheba and the ways that he got that wife, when that wife wasn't his wife first because it was somebody else's wife. David was the counterfeit. David was the third party. And just because you did this, you think the Lord's going to bless it. But look at how, even with what they did, thank you, Holy Spirit. Look at how David was well known in the Bible. Look at how he was categorized and characterized as the man after God's own heart.